Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Skipbound, and this is the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. And once again, co-hosting with me on this episode is Mr. Jeremy Adams. Jeremy, how are you doing this evening?
I'm getting a feedback.
You are?
Real bad.
Sorry. I just had some lightning. Maybe that's...
Okay. All right, well, I'm doing okay. I'm a little under the weather today, but, that's okay. I can still talk about a movie that I love, and I'm excited to be back. Last one I did, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, was a lot of fun, and so I'm ready to talk about another great movie today.
And I'm glad to have you. So, obviously, we're talking about E.T., the Extraterrestrial, a movie that is near and dear to Jeremy and myself. I saw it when I was, I believe, 7 or 8 years old. I saw it in a drive-in theater, and it's one of the most memorable things about my childhood. One of the most positive things about my childhood growing up is when I first saw E.T. the Extraterrestrial in a drive-in theater, and I know it means a lot to you as well.
Yeah, it's actually the first movie I remember seeing in the theater. I was 3 years old when this movie came out, and I do have a memory. I believe we went to see it twice. I have two memories, basically. I have a memory of we had to sit pretty far up, so we were pretty close to the screen, and we'll get to it later, but then when the early scene, when you see the flashlights of the scientists chasing through the woods, I was really scared and terrified then. So I kind of remember that, and then I also remember we saw it a second time, and we had relatives that came in from Michigan, and we went to see it with them, and I had, at that point, the movie had caught on so much that I had an E.T. stuffed figure. So we went in and I was carrying it. And I remember my cousins and the other people in the audience being, "Oh, that's cute. He got an E.T. and he brought it to the movie theater and stuff." So yeah, it's and we'll talk about it as we go on. But this is a movie that, obviously is significant, being the first movie I saw, but also is significant for me, for my childhood in a multitude of ways. So
yeah, absolutely. I concur 100%. I don't even remember who nominated. I believe I nominated it because how much it meant to me growing up. But the cast is Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore, C. Thomas Howell, Peter Coyote, D. Reese, and Robert McNaughton. Those are pretty much the main characters in the movie.
D. Wallace, did you say? Sorry.
D. Reese. D. Reese.
Who's that?
It's not D. Reese. I got D. Reese is a director. Dang.
Okay.
D. Wallace.
Right. D. Wallace plays the mom. Yes.
D. Reese oh man, I'm writing my notes.
That's okay.
Name down.
Soon after, she also played the mom in Cujo. Very different movie.
Right. Two different moms, two different movies. You're absolutely. Wow, I can't believe I wrote the wrong name down.
That's all right.
And then obviously it's directed by Steven Spielberg. This is like his third or fourth movie at this point in his career. Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. Then he did.
I think it's his sixth.
At this time, it was his sixth.
I believe so.
Okay.
The Sugarland Express, Jaws, Close
wow.
Encounters of the Third Kind, 1941, Raiders. It's his seventh. Raiders. Yeah. No, sixth. Raiders is the fifth. Okay.
All right. Well, I normally would not do this, but I'm getting a lot of noise. I'm going to have to get up and close the door. So I'll be right back.
Sure. Yeah, but I'll go ahead and fill in for a minute. So yeah, E.T., this was a movie that was written by Melissa Matheson, who was a great screenwriter who was married to Harrison Ford during that period. And also this was a movie that Steven Spielberg personally was very passionate about, but he considered it a passion project and actually didn't think it would be a big hit. He thought it was just going to be a passion project that he did. It had a pretty low budget. I believe it was only about $10 million. So you can see the movie had a little bit of humble origins, especially compared to what would end up happening with it.
Oh, absolutely. We've talked about this before. I've had this discussion with many people. You don't know how much something is going to resonate with people until 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years later. This is 35 years to the year that E.T. came out. I mean, it's just crazy how long ago it was, right?
Yeah. And another thing I think is important is, a lot of people set out to make movies. Okay, let's make this movie because we think it's going to be a hit. This movie is going to be popular. They do market research. Okay, this is a story. These are actors that are going to be a hit. And that, I think, isn't the best way to go about making a piece of art. But when you set out to make a movie because you love the idea, you're passionate about it, it's a story you want to tell, and it's a story that's personal to you, that is a better way to make a movie, and that can result in even greater success, and that can resonate with audiences even more. So I think that is, for me, is one of the main things we need to think about with E.T. and how this movie was made and the impact it ended up having. Like, this was not a cynical sort of commercial product.
No, you don't know. Jaws is the same way. Close Encounters is, you don't know how the films are going to resonate with people. We could get into talking about so many instances where directors like, oh my God, this movie was a nightmare, blah 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 blah. Bam, it turns into one of the greatest films of all time.
The Godfather.
I was going to say Apocalypse Now, but that's
both.
But let's get into the movie. So, we're going to go quickly through this, and what we always do. You and I just discuss it like we're having a normal discussion over a meal or something. We get an alien ship. Aliens leave E.T. behind. We got a beautiful view of Los Angeles, which is an interesting, cool shot. We get hunters in a Bronco. E.T. runs away from the hunters. Anything you have to say about that stuff?
I have two things to say about the opening scene. The first thing is we cannot talk about this movie without talking about the person that I think is the most important to this film next to Steven Spielberg, and that is John Williams. John Williams is, to me, kind of the star of this film, and you get that right away. That opening sequence with the titles and everything, the music is very atmospheric. You don't really know, what kind of movie is this going to be? Is this like a creepy movie? Is this like a drama? What is it? You really don't know. Just the mood that he builds in the early scene, and then when you get the ship and eventually get your little peeks at the aliens, the way that the music characterizes all of that, so you're getting different emotions and different feelings. It's one of the great cinematic ways to score a film, and one of the great cases of what the score can do in telling the story. And the second thing I want to talk about is sound design is very important. All of Spielberg's films, I think, when you talk about Jaws, that sound is a big deal in that film. And in this movie, what they tell the story in visuals, they also tell the story in sound a lot. There's a lot of stuff you don't see. There's a lot of stuff that you're not sure what's going on. And the one thing that's really important to me is there's one particular scientist, because you get the guys, you're not quite sure who they are, but we come to realize they're a group of scientists, and they're after this alien ship, and they're kind of faceless guys. We see them like from the torso down a lot. We don't see their faces, but we know who the leader is, and we know who the important one is because he's got dangling keys dangling from his belt, because he's probably the guy who's in charge of whatever facility they work at. So keys is how we're going to know this character, and that they set up that character, they set up the significance of that character just through sound design, and that is an important thing you get right away, and how important, like the intricacy of how they do this film.
And then, the truck doors shutting and the rustling of the leaves and brush. E.T.'s right, the rustling of the brush, and then the truck doors and stuff like that. That's what you're talking about by sound design. Mm-hmm. And we do get a visual of Peter Coyote. They do briefly show Peter Coyote. We know it's him. He's the main scientist. So then we get the boys are playing cards, and C. Thomas Howell's like, here, take some money, go get or Robert McNaughton, the brother. I will get the names.
Michael.
I got the names here in my notes. I just he said, "Hey, go take some money. We ordered a pizza, and so go outside." He tells Henry, "Go outside." Not Henry. Elliot, go outside and get the pizza. The pizza guys come in, and of course, E.T.'s in the shed. He rolls a baseball out. Then Elliot drops the pizza, runs back, steps over the pizza on his way back, tells his brother there's something in the shed. The brothers come out, grab knives, go out to the shed, and then they go back and you're lying. You don't know what you're talking about. E.T. goes back out there, sees feet on the ground. He has a flashlight. He looks at E.T. He looks back. They both scream at each other. They both start screaming at each other, and the trash cans get rustled because E.T. runs away. You got anything to say about this stuff?
I want to talk about the scene with the boys, because I think one of the most important things in Spielberg's movies is the authenticity of the characters, and especially whenever there's child killer characters in his films. And we saw it in Close Encounters and Jaws, but here the natural like realism of these boys and how they talk together and like how they insult each other and stuff is really important in putting us into this world so that it feels really real, and these are real characters so that we're attached to them before we get launched into the fantastical stuff that's going to happen. And there is some kind of bad language. When they're telling Elliot that he lied, he calls one of them penis breath, which is not something you would probably see in a family film today, but I actually think it really works. And it's important saying these kids talk like real kids and they're real people. And then also we do get our first peak of E.T., and the design of this character is he's not like a pretty character. I wouldn't describe him as cute, like he's not super cute like an Ewok, but it's a very alien, but yet there is something approachable about him. It's not like a malicious creature. You just get that sense from it, its motions and how it moves. And I just think the design is so important in this movie. You'll get to love this creature as it goes on, but no, it isn't a cuddly, stuffed animal or a puppet or anything. This is a real creature we can believe in.
But the thing about why you think you might actually like the character and you might like is the eyes. The eyes are just wide, big, and they're like blue. I think they're blue eyes.
Yeah.
So they're eyes that you can relate to. There's a lot of emotion in E.T.'s eyes.
There is.
It's you might not think so, but then we get the dinner with the family, and of course he's telling them, and they're all like, we don't believe you. And then the next series of scenes, you know what, Jeremy? I'm sure you can remember some of these things. I'm going to do some eating right now.
Okay, all right.
So, I'm going to have some of these.
There you go. You had me going.
Talk about the movie. I'm hungry.
So I'm going to tell a quick story. So they knew in the script it was written that Elliot was going to lure E.T. to come out and reveal himself and for him to meet E.T. with candy. And the candy they were going to use was M&M's. So they went to the company M&M's, and M&M said, "No, I don't think we want our candy used that way. I don't think we want it used for some weird alien storyline. That doesn't seem like a good thing for our brand." So they're like, okay, well, there's this new candy. It's just coming off the market from Reese's. It's called Reese's Pieces. Why don't we use that? That works just as well. It's very similar to M&M's. We can use that. And this movie, went on to make Reese's Pieces, really popular, a candy that I've eaten all my life. One of the greatest pieces of marketing in film history. So it just goes to show you these funny little things that can happen.
Yeah, I wanted to do that to surprise you with my.
That was great.
Prop.
I'm like, gosh, Dan's not so professional these days.
I'm not all about the professional. If I can eat some great candy, are you kidding me? I'd rather do that now. So then we get the. Obviously, I got it in my notes. You got it. Penis breath. I calls him.
Yeah.
And then he says, "You know what? I'm gonna sleep outside because I'm gonna find E.T." And he eventually meets E.T. and they become friends. And he lures him with Reese's Pieces up to his room, into his closet, and he's sick. He's faking sick.
Yeah.
E.T. falls asleep. They both fall asleep. He's faking sick. He shows him some action figures, some Star Wars action figures, which is kind of cool at the time.
Yeah.
Talk about marketing, how close him and George Lucas are that he could put Star Wars marketing in it, a movie that's not Star Wars. And we got one more instance of that later on in the film, not that far from now. So talk about how he eventually becomes friends with E.T. and the closet and all that.
Well, first off, I wanted to say it's really cool that they paid homage to Star Wars there. That Star Wars toys were huge at this point, and George Lucas owned the licensing to all the Star Wars toys. So it was kind of a neat little, we're going to plug Star Wars even more in this film. And, we know this is going to connect kids even more because all the kids love Star Wars. And then George Lucas ultimately repaid the favor in the prequel trilogy when there's this Senate meeting with all of the different alien races from all over the universe. You see in there the ET race, you see ET characters sitting there in that. So it's a nice call back and forth between Spielberg's canon and the Star Wars George Lucas canon. But yeah, these scenes where ET basically spends the day with Elliot as Elliot's playing hooky from school and they get to know each other, they're so important, and you just really quickly grow to love this alien and realize this is such a special character. And this is a movie that, you know, really is a metaphorical story about, you know, of a boy, you know, kind of transitioning to growing up, not really being a kid anymore. And I think that happens in your life when you have relationships with people, when you have friendships, when you get connected to a friend in your life and they kind of help you get to know yourself better. And this movie, even though it's a weird, bizarre looking alien, this is that story, and it does it in one of the greatest ways of any movie, and telling this coming of age friendship story. And these scenes are just so natural, real, and this is all practical effects with ET. Like, you know, this is all they created this stuff with puppetry and hydraulics and animatronics, and it's so real. And even on the set, like, he was real to the kids. Like, the kids really believed ET was real, and even though they saw the guys working on him and stuff, there was some magic in that character that became real. And it is just a story of a kid and his friend and their relationship.
Absolutely. Another product placement. He gives ET
the beer.
No, he gives him a Coke.
The Coke, yeah.
Beers later on.
Yeah.
The beers later on. He gives him a Coke, and he likes Coke. You know, that's another major product placement at the time. In a movie like that, you put Coke in there. Holy smokes. That's even better than Mad Men's John Hamm doing a Coke and a smile, or whatever it's called. Then E.T. meets the dog, Harvey the dog. And, of course, you know, Harvey, you know, you don't know what it is. He barks.
Yeah.
So then Mom doesn't fall for it twice, makes Elliot go to school. So E.T.'s basically in the house all by himself with nobody around. Goes to the refrigerator, you know, get some stuff out of the refrigerator. He ends up drinking some milk, but he also gets like some potato salad, throws the potato salad. The dog eats the potato salad.
Yeah.
The milk falls on the floor. Then later on, the brother, Michael, meets E.T., and accidentally the door's not shut. So who comes in? Gertie comes in, and we get another classic scene where she's going, ah! She goes, ah! You know, that's Drew Barrymore plays Gertie, very, very young Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So talk some about that.
First off, Drew Barrymore came to Steven Spielberg to audition, but it wasn't for this movie. It was for the other movie he was working on at that time called Poltergeist. This is the movie that she actually auditioned for. And he said, you know, to her and her parents, you know, I just don't think you're quite the right fit for this story, but I got something else I'm working on, and we're going to keep you in mind. So he kind of held her, and then she was the one that they chose when they ended up making E.T. So I just think, you know, it just shows his intelligence, because I really feel like, you know, this was the movie that would have been right for her, not Poltergeist. Like, she wasn't the right personality for that movie, and it's a nice little detail. And yeah, I think all three of the kids are so fantastic together. The relationship between the older brother and both of the younger kids is so natural. And I was an older brother. I had a brother that was 11 years younger than me, and so whenever I watched E.T. as a kid, I kind of really related to Elliot and that story. But when I watch it now, I really relate more to the older brother, because again, I was an older brother, and the stuff that he says and the stuff that Michael does is so relatable. Like, this is, you know, and he cares, but he gives him a lot of crap, and he gets like, oh no, what's Mom gonna think, and all this stuff. It's all the stuff that the older kid kind of goes through.
Yeah, no, you're right. My younger brother was like an older brother. He was just like,
yeah,
everything. So we had the roles reversed. My twin brother and I were like the younger brothers, where my younger brother was the older brother. So we kind of had those roles reversed. When he got older, he was like the big brother, because he was Mr. Everything. So I can understand where you're coming from with the older brother, younger brother thing, and sister, because there was four of us. But All right, so then everybody's hiding from mom. Mom comes in because she hears the scream. Then we see a scene, and this is what I kind of like about how Spielberg he shows us another scene of the men, and they're getting closer. This time they're on the edge of the woods and the subdivision. You see the subdivision, and they're standing on the edge of the woods looking down.
Mm-hmm.
So first we see them in the woods walking around, looking around. Now they're on the edge of the woods.
Yeah.
And down at the so they're getting closer. Obviously, and then all the kids try to figure out, okay, where is he from? So they get this whole geography lesson with the globe and planet globe, and that's where you get the quote from Gertie, "What's happening?"
As E.T. Uses his power, and we get to realize that he's got these powers in this movie. Because first, have we had the scenes yet where he links with Elliot and Elliot goes to school, or are we still getting to that?
Yeah, we haven't got that yet.
Okay, so yeah, so we see the power here is that he can basically have the power over objects, maybe not too different from the Force that we saw in Star Wars, but kind of a similar alien power where he can actually animate objects and move them. So we're going to see he lifts things into the air to kind of to show the kids the thing that he needs to tell them, and that's when Gertie says, "What's happening?"
And then we start to see another power that he has. He's got some connection to plant life. He brings the dead plant back to life, and this is a key thing in the movie. This plant.
And we saw at the beginning of the film that's why they came to Earth. He was looking at the plants. He's actually a botanist, and that was their mission to come to Earth, was to get some of the plants and the vegetation to take back for study. So yeah, that he's not only is he a botanist, but he's got like a supernatural power over plant life and stuff, and like a connection with it.
And so then he has to hide from mom because that she's. They haven't told her about him yet. This is when we get another scene where he is in the house alone, where he's drinking beer. And he's drinking beer and he's walking around and he's kind of getting drunk. But something happens to Elliot. Elliot starts to get drunk the same as E.T. starts to get drunk. Then E.T. watches TV and he starts to learn how to talk by watching TV. And he teaches him. He's also reading comics. He's reading from the comics, and he sees Buck Rogers in the comics, and he starts putting things together. He is not stupid. He's a smart young man, and I'm calling him a young man. I think he's similar. Maybe he's a young version of his species. I think he's a young guy. I think he's a member of his species. I don't think he's that old. He might be old for his species for us, but he's young for his species. And he's watching A Quiet Man. The
Quiet Man, yeah.
I got
probably the first time I was exposed to this classic film was by seeing the scenes in E.T. And it's a wonderful homage that they have the John Ford, John Wayne classic in there.
Yeah, I was like, okay. What a great.
And Spielberg, always talked about his love for John Ford as a filmmaker. So nice little homage there to one of his heroes and his idols.
And while he's drunk, Elliot kisses a girl.
Yeah. And by the way, this is the actress is Erika Eleniak, one of her first films, and this is an actress who had a little bit of popularity in the 90s. She was in a movie called Chasers and some other films. So in the 90s when I rewatched E.T., went back, I'm like, oh wait, that's Erika Eleniak. I know her. Under Siege. She's a lot of people know her for coming out of a cake in Under Siege. So film from the 90s. So it's a nice little thing there.
And so mom comes home from grocery shopping, and E.T. is in the house because Gertie dresses him up as a girl.
Yeah.
And she's like walking around the house, and mom almost knocks. Mom, I gotta show you something. And then E.T. goes in the bed. Elliot goes in the bedroom and screams. He's like, "What have you done? What are you doing?" Because he thinks E.T. is a boy, not a girl, and then Gertie thinks E.T. is a girl,
Yeah.
And then there was like, I got here, kids release something introduced to ads. I don't know. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, Mom. Okay, I got it. Gertie teaches E.T. to spell.
Yes.
Gertie teaches E.T. to spell.
With the speak and spell, right?
Yeah, with the speak and spell.
Which, if you were a kid in the 80s, this was a toy that was very popular. It was a speak and spell toy, and you used it. You would type words into it, and the little digital words would come up on it. And this is great storytelling here because they're setting something up. Like they could have just had her, telling him how to spell, but they also set up the speak and spell, which is something that's going to be used later in the film and is going to be important. So it's like the great storytelling, everything tying together.
Yeah, because Gertie really does do some things that helps E.T. interact with Elliot better, and that's why she dresses E.T. up as a girl and all this. Teaches him how to spell and whatnot. And so then we got a surveillance van. We once again we go back to the scientists, and there's a surveillance van. Now this time it's driving down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of these guys are getting closer, and then Elliot cuts his finger, and E.T. heals him.
Yeah, we see the finger light up, the E.T.'s finger, which is a very iconic image from this film.
And that's where the ads come in. I was reading my notes wrong. Gertie tries to introduce him to ads, and when Mom leaves him alone, he sees the phone,
mm-hmm.
and then he sees the people on the TV talking on the phone, and then he says the iconic line.
E.T.?
You want to say it? You can say it.
All right. E.T. phone home.
Absolutely. One of the greatest lines in movie history.
I believe it's in the AFI top best movie lines. Yeah, it's up there.
If you don't have emotion, I'm having emotions right now.
Yeah.
About that. E.T. phone home line is just, it really gets you in the feels.
Yeah.
Then they talk to him enough to where he tells them that he needs different things. So he can build a beacon or a homing device, so he could phone home.
Send a distress signal. Have them come pick him up.
Yep. And this is where we have Halloween. Halloween is
I love these scenes.
A big picture in the a big part of the movie. One of the kind of better parts of the movie. I mean, the whole movie's great. I mean, I'm not saying, but Halloween's kind of a fun thing because they dress E.T. up as a ghost, but they're faking it because they want Mom to think that it's Gertie. And Mom's dressed in a cheetah costume.
Yeah.
Mike's got a knife sticking out of his head, and E.T. keeps going. He wants to heal Mike.
Yeah. Because he thinks he's actually hurt. He's got the fake knife in his head. Yeah, it's always great.
And then that's when we have another call back to Star Wars because we see another
costume.
A kid walking down the street in a Yoda costume.
Yep.
And he wants to go up to him.
Yeah, he's like, hey, no. Where are you from?
And the other kids are like a lookout. The C. Thomas Howell and Mike's buddies, they're all kind of like a lookout. And then we get E.T. This is the scene that really, in my childhood, Jeremy, it was one of the most things in my life that really made me who I am as a film critic, a film person, a film lover, is because we saw this in a drive-in theater. And when Elliot's riding that bike and E.T.'s in that basket and they're going into the space, you see the stars. And I swear to God, I'm not messing with you, that bike went right through the drive-in theater and went right out into space.
Oh, came out of the movie.
That's how realistic I thought it was as a kid, as an 8-year-old kid, but then we get just what you said earlier in the movie, that iconic E.T. score
that
from
theme.
John Williams that you will never forget. If you're a fan of movies and you're a fan of these kinds of films, you'll never forget some of John Williams' scores. And this is one of those ones that you're just like, wow, how could I forget something so amazing and incredible?
Yeah. Makes an incredible moment even that much more incredible with the music, and the visual effects I think still really hold up today. And it's just, yeah, it is such just one of the great joyful moments in cinema when Elliot goes off of that cliff and flies into this guy on that bike over the outline of the moon. And that was also the cover that I always on the VHS box and everything you had. It was always the one bike in front of the moon over the forest. So that was the ET image.
A couple of the lines Elliot says why he's riding is not so high.
Yeah.
Moon don't crash. You know, it's like stuff kids would say, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Moon don't crash, you know. And then mom's looking around because they were supposed to be back at a certain time, and they're not back. So mom jumps in the car, starts going looking around. And then he ends up coming back home because she called the cops and whatnot. But he ends up coming back home, and of course, she was really, really worried. And we've all been there. I've been there a couple of times when I was that age, little kid, 10, 11, 12, whatever. Mom and dad was looking for me. I got lost on a beach in a downpour, and I was just sitting on the steps of a fried dough place. I don't know if you have fried dough in California.
Yeah, not as much of a California thing, but yeah. But yeah, I remember getting lost in the shopping mall and stuff like that. It's just, yeah, it's always a thing. The one thing I want to talk about real quick that we didn't really touch on earlier is that this is actually also a story about a single parent and kids who are living with one parent. And Spielberg, this is one of the reasons this movie's so personal for him, is because he was a child of divorce. So this stuff really resonates. Like, you can tell how much this is a resonant personal story for him, in that these, you know, their dad left, they're living with their mom. There's some heartbreaking scenes where they're talking about how the dad's in Mexico with his new girlfriend, and the mom didn't know, and she finds out, and she's all, he hates Mexico, and the kids kind of have to take this on. Like, they've said something that's upset their mom, they know stuff, and it's like the stuff that kids have to, like, become adults prematurely when there's a break in the family like this. And the way the movie, you know, shows all of that, and the terror with the mom when they're gone and they didn't come home, and she's got to go looking for him, and she doesn't have anyone to help her. She's on her own. It's all this really real stuff that hits you and makes this movie that much more universal and powerful emotionally. You know, it's not just this sci-fi fantasy kids movie.
And that's when we really get some emotion. This is where the crying really starts. The waterworks really start for me as a kid growing up. He gets him out there. They set the homing device up, the beacon, whatever you want to call it. And E.T.'s like, Elliot's like, E.T., it's working. And then when he sees it's working, that's when the emotion really starts to set in with Elliot. And he's like, I could take care of you. We could grow up together. And I mean, it's just like your emotions as a child, or you can feel the emotions.
He doesn't want to lose them. It's just, you know, and we can all relate to that relationship. You know, I think a lot of people relate to this as it's a relationship with a boy and his pet. You know, you could relate to it as a boy and his best friend, or, you know, a relative. So yeah, it's very important stuff, very powerful stuff.
And of course, that's when throughout the movie, we see the men getting closer and closer. Mm-hmm. And closer. That's a trend throughout the video as well, because we finally get the men coming to the house, and they're looking through the house. They're starting to look through the house.
This was the most terrifying moment for me as a kid, by the way, is when you see them looking through the windows and stuff. The bright light that's shining through, the way that the cinematographer's name is Alan Deview. And yeah, the atmospheric lighting in this movie, it's not what you would expect from a kid's movie. It's almost like got a similar feel to some of the John Carpenter films. It's, you know, a lot of shadowy, dark imagery in this film, and just the dark image of the house with the light shining through the windows and these strange guys looking through the windows and see, you know, the menacing presence of these guys is just, it's really, you know, like something out of a horror movie, and it's so impactful.
And Elliot and E.T. are at this point, it's daytime, and they end up sleeping in the woods. And he looks, ET's gone, and he asked Mike to go looking for ET.
Yeah.
So Mike's like riding around on the bikes, and you start seeing all these cars start following Mike. And of course, you can get places on a bicycle that cars can't get. And so he ends up getting away from the cars and getting into the woods. And that's when we see ET is, I'm calling it dying. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Dying by a river ravine.
Yeah.
And Elliot and Mike, they find him, they get him, and they bring him back to the house. And that's the first time Mom gets to see ET.
Yeah, and I always thought it was a heartbreaking image of ET being all white, pasty, lying on the ground there, and it's like he's so sick. And you start to see Elliot getting pale because they're still connected. And I think when you watch the movie as a kid, you don't quite understand all the little details. And as I watch the movie more and more growing up, I go to realize, well, the reason that ET is getting sick and dying and everything is because he's connected to his people, and they've been gone so long that without that connection, he can't really survive. And then Elliot is also starting to get sick because he's connected to to ET, and as ET gets sick and weak, so does Elliot. So those are kind of the things that are actually going on. You may not, when you're a little kid watching it, kind of pick up on all those details.
No, you don't. You're absolutely not. It took me multiple watchings to start figuring that stuff out. And I've watched it now twice in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Then we get one of the coolest scenes, because Men in Black never was a thing, but this movie really started. These guys weren't dressed in black, but they felt like Men in Black.
Yeah,
they were dressed, and in the scene of them coming down the street, rolling the tube, the air tube, and they were dressed in hazmat suits and stuff like that. That's when stuff, as an 8-year-old, you're like, holy crap, I'm scared. This is scary. What is going on? And then the cops hook up the air bubble. They put the air bubble and everything, and then they have this whole environment where Elliot's on a table and ET's on a table. They're in these kind of environments, air environments and stuff. And then Elliot yells, "You're scaring him!" And then they're both, Elliot's sick, So then we see the plant dying, ET's dying, and then he yells again, "You're killing him!"
Yeah.
I mean, the emotions are just going through the roof at this point when you're a child watching this movie, or whatever. I mean, I'm just expressing how I felt when I was watching the movie.
Yeah, and I think it's, for most children in that era, and even today that watch this movie, it gets more and more emotional, and you're really going through this experience with Elliot as it happens. And it's one of the reasons it is such a great family film and has the status that it has, because it's so emotionally powerful, in the way that it tells its story. And there are very few kids movies that do that.
Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head 100%.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, ET starts coming back to life, and he says, "ET phone home."
Yeah.
And then Elliot realizes, and he starts fake crying to get to kind of fool.
By the way, the little detail, this is such great storytelling. So we saw that he had a connection with plants. So he had kind of brought this plant to life that they had in a pot. Well, they're carrying the plant with them, and we see the plant die, and we see that before ET dies, we see the plant die. So we're like, that's how we know what's happening. It's actually Gertie, I believe, it's holding it, so she kind of knows what's going on. And then before we get ET coming back to life, we see they're holding the plant. The plant's coming back to life, and it's great storytelling of, oh goodness, what's happening. And again, the detail you may not catch as a kid, but the fact that the plant comes back to life and the fact that ET resurrects, we know that his people are back. That's what that means. His people have come back, because that's his lifeline. The other little thing that I don't think you mentioned was that he released Elliot from their connection before he died, so that Elliot started getting healthier as ET was dying, and that's such a powerful little moment. It's like, he's this is such a caring being that he would release this kid, because he didn't have a choice, and the heartbreak in Elliot's like he knows when he released him, that means he is going to die. That's the only reason that he would release him like that. And again, this is a weird little aside, but in the movie AI artificial intelligence, there are a lot of, this is a Spielberg movie later on, there are a lot of references to the movie Pinocchio, like Blue Fairy and the story of Pinocchio, and he wants to be a real boy. That's kind of the story in AI, and you can tell that Spielberg had a lot of love for that classic Disney film. But I always found a connection here, because in Pinocchio, at the end of the film, Pinocchio actually dies. And it's one of the most powerful moments in a Disney film. He drowns and he dies, and they put him on a bed, his lifeless puppet body, and then he comes back to life, and that is the thing at the end. And I always felt a connection here when the moment where E.T. comes back to life. It's a lot like that Pinocchio moment, and I feel like there's so many, like, Spielberg doesn't get his credit as being a lover of classic cinema. And he's always making these little homages and callbacks to all the great classic films that he loves, and such various films, from The Quiet Man to Pinocchio. And I think you get, again, you don't get this stuff as a kid. You don't get this stuff even as an adult. But if you watch the movies more and more, and you have more of a knowledge of cinema, you pick up on these things. And this isn't just, Spielberg's kids movie that he made. This is like all of his movies. This movie has a love for cinema, and it rewards those that love cinema. And the more you know about cinema, the more you're going to appreciate this film, just like his other great films.
Oh yeah, you said a mouthful. You absolutely said a mouthful. And anybody can see the the similar notes of Pinocchio. It's you, because I know how much Pinocchio.
Yeah.
I know that's a film that in the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. We will be getting to Pinocchio eventually.
Yeah.
Because that guy right there, you're looking at him.
I have to make you do some Disney, Dan. I have to make you do it.
I'm not a heartless man. I like Disney.
Of course not. You love E.T. How could you be?
Yeah. Well, so we know he's alive. Then the boys escape by driving a van. Mike ends up driving a van. And he says, "I'm not used to driving forward. I've only driven back."
I've never driven forward before. So
the boys are escaping in the van, and he yells at the other guys. He says, "Meet us by the playground." So C. Thomas Howell and the rest of the kids meet him at the playground, and they bring the bikes so they could get to the top of the hill. And so when they get there, while they're driving, the men are connected to the van, and they fall. He's like the things out.
The tube. They pulled the tube out that they were walking through, because they thought there was going to be alien contamination. So they tented everything, and they created these tubes that they could walk through, so that no one would be exposed to whatever E.T. might be contagious with. So they're pulled the tube out behind the truck when they take off, and the guys are in it. They're trying to get into the truck, and then they disconnect it, and the guys fall into the street. And that whole little business always reminds me of the truck chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I feel like that's almost like Spielberg calling back to himself a little, and it's a great moment. I also real quick wanted to hit on, like, one of my favorite little moments in the movie is when they go to meet the kids in the park, and there's a Star Trek reference. Which I thought it was a wonderful, homage to Star Trek there, when they're like, "Well, we got to get him back to his people, and they got to come pick him up." And then the kid's like, "Well, can't he just beam up?" And then he's like, "This is real life, Greg." And it's like, no, this isn't real life. This is just a movie, but to them it's real, and Star Trek is fake. So I just love all those little things there. And
this is, going back to Indiana Jones in a way. This is kind of some of the type of adventures and some of the that Indy gets into. The bike scenes with the cop cars, and through the construction site of all the different, like, once again, the boys know how to get around on the bikes, and the cops don't necessarily. Hey, why don't we split up? And one group of boys goes this way. What do? They meet up while the cops get stymied and stop because they can't take a car up a big steep hill or down the side of a big pile of dirt or something.
Yeah.
So all the boys get to the woods, and they make they make it to the woods. And
well, how did they get to the woods? We got to talk about that part.
Well, they end up almost getting stopped
In the
by
street,
the cops.
yeah.
The
Police
cops
barricade.
have guns. The cops have guns. They have a barricade, and E.T. just lifts them all up, and they end up flying into the sky. And
just so great. All of them in a line. And this time, the outline of the sun. We had the outline of the moon earlier. Now we have the one kid in the outline of the moon. Now we have all the kids in the outline of the sun. And I love that the one kid's afraid of heights, because that would be me. I would be that kid. He's like, it's so great. And there's such, like, when you were a kid, Dan, did you ever, like, when you were riding your bike, did you ever, like, act these scenes out? Because I know I did. Like, whenever I was riding a bike as a kid, I was always like, they're chasing me, and I got ET, and it's just great wish fulfillment for a kid.
I didn't have a bike.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I lived in the city, and it was all concrete streets and tenements, and I ended up having a lot of other toys, and I stayed in the house a lot.
Yeah.
With those toys, and I ended up reading and watching TV shows and watching movies. That's basically my childhood, always into adulthood.
Yeah, I lived in the kind of a suburban neighborhood, not very different from the one in this movie, and also in California. So I think it really felt real for me, living in these environments, having my bike and riding around, and yeah, it's just something I could really connect to and have some wish fulfillment as a kid. So
I would have loved to have been able to do some of the things that these kids did as in ET, but alas, I didn't. Until we moved to New Hampshire. When we moved to New Hampshire, we had a little bit more of that kind of freedom going here, doing this with your bike. We did have a bike when we had more space to ride and go places and do stuff like that. But of course, we're in the woods, and the machine's working, and we see the ship come down, and then we get some really emotional scenes with Elliot and E.T. It's just, E.T. is, he's like, he thanks him. He says, thank you. And he gives him a hug. And it's just.
He has a moment with each kid, by the way, which I think is really great, because all of these, yes, it's Elliot's story, but the older brother and the sister also connected to him. And so he gets his moment with each of them. I particularly love the moment he has with Gertie when he tells her, be good. It's so great and so emotional. I love that it's a powerful scene, but Spielberg is always great in injecting moments of comedy and levity, like little releases in the scenes. And the scene where the dog jumps onto the drawbridge trying to get into the spaceship, and then when he sees what's in there, he's like, nope, and the dog's out of there. That's a great little funny moment that's so real in the middle of everything that's going on. And I love the turnaround that the Keys character has, because he could easily get his guys there, because he comes with the mom and with Gertie, and he goes to realize what's going on and what's really important. So I love that little bit. This is a movie that really doesn't have a villain. Like, this isn't a movie where there really is a villain. These scientists, they're scary for you when you're a kid, but they're just scientists trying to do the right thing. And an alien came to Earth, and it's their job to explore that. And and this guy in particular, kind of, you're scared of him at the beginning, but he really grows to be this character that's really a good guy and trying to do the right thing, and ultimately does do the right thing. And I think this is such a there's so many movies, even kids movies, that are very dark, and they got real evil villains and all of this stuff, and maybe what they have to say about life isn't all that positive when you really break it down. But this is such a positive movie, much like you can't talk about it without talking about Close Encounters, the earlier film that he made that had a very kind of similar story, a similar ending. And this movie people are not really bad. People inherently aren't bad, and they can be great, and something great like this can happen, and people can find their best selves in these situations, and it's such a wonderful movie in that way. I think that's another reason that it's lasted, is because of its positivity.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And real quick, going back to the Peter Coyote character, he said, this is a the quote that came from him, like this is a dream for you. This is a a major thing for you, but this is also a major thing for me.
Yeah.
I dreamed of an alien coming to Earth.
It's why he does what he does, because
Yeah.
this was his dream his whole life.
Yeah, but like you said, he let him go, and then we see the call back to the plant, and he's holding the plant, and he goes up the ramp, and he's looking out, and then the ship flies away. But you're right, each one of the emotional scenes with the children, Gertie and Michael and E.T., of course, was the roughest one to sit through.
His last line, the last line that E.T. speaks to Elliot, which is like, he points to his finger to. Well, first, the really great moment is when he lifts up his finger and says, "Ouch." Because like they got injured early. He got injured earlier, and he used his finger to heal him, and it's like this hurts even more, and ouch. And then the last line that he says, "I'll be right here," like because E.T.'s, we can actually see his heart, like it lights up when his people are near him. We see it in his chest, like his heart beating, and it's like, "I'll be right here. You'll be in my heart, and I'll be in your heart, and this connection that we had isn't going to go away. It's always going to be there." And that's what again, what the story is these friends that you have in childhood and these experiences that you have are always going to be with you. Even when you have to say goodbye or let a certain time in your life go, that time in your life is always going to be a part of you. And it's just that is such a wonderful thing to end the movie on, even though it's kind of devastating to watch it.
As an 8-year-old, like I said, I keep going back to that 8-year-old me. This movie gets more and more difficult for an 8-year-old to watch and have to deal with. But the question, Jeremy, what's coming, why we are doing this. Of course, a lot of folks have seen E.T. the Extraterrestrial. You and I have a special love for the movie. But for people that haven't seen this movie or might watch this video and say, wow, I want to go watch this movie, I want to share this video with my children. And I actually did share this video, not the video, but E.T. the Extraterrestrial this week with a very, very close friend of mine and his wife, and he has a 7-year-old son. I said I was 7 when I saw it. I think I was 8. I said, you might want to sit down with, and I've been spending some time with my nephew, William. Took him to The Incredibles 2 the other night. I said, you might want to sit down. I think this is a good age for William to watch E.T.
Yeah. So
why, Jeremy? I know you've said so much about this film.
Yeah.
But the question, the question that's coming. Why is E.T. the Extraterrestrial?
Excuse me. Sorry, I got interrupted for a second. It's just it's one of those. There are certain films that are made for families, for children and their parents that just are the all-time greats and will always live on. And it's like you have Wizard of Oz, you have Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you have E.T., you go forward, you have the Harry Potter films. Like there's just something about these particular movies. It's hard to pin it down. Like they're very different films, but they're the ones that always live on. And I think it's a combination of they have great messages. They have great lessons to teach you. You really connect to the characters, and the characters really feel real, and that really that's what movies are at their best, is they're movies about characters. They're not just these big special effects and whatever action adventure. Like if you don't care about the characters and you're not connected to them, none of that stuff's really going to mean much, and the movie isn't going to resonate. It's because these characters feel real and they're so memorable, and you connect to them. That is what makes these particular movies really live on and so important. And and there's a lot of other things. Like I said, the score, that John Williams score is it's right up there for me with Star Wars, with Superman, with Jurassic Park, all those great pieces of music that John Williams scored. This one's right up there. And a lot of that is just the emotion of it, like the way that it does, get a lot of those emotions through and boost, this story even more. And again, this is probably Spielberg's most personal film. Maybe Schindler's List in a different way is, you know, his most personal, but it's, I think between those two, this is really, you know, this isn't just, he gets kind of a bad rap as he's just the blockbuster director and he just makes pieces of entertainment and his movies aren't particularly deep. I think that's what a lot of people, you know, kind of cast off Spielberg that way. And it's like, no, this is a very deep movie. This is a movie, this is a movie where he's really telling kind of his story in a way, but he's found this wonderful way to tell it, you know, and this wonderful science fiction fantasy family story. But this really is him giving you a piece of who he is, and telling you, you know, telling kids, you know, something bad can happen. You know, your parents can break up, bad things can happen, but you know, there's always people will come into your life that will help you. Wonderful things can happen, and there's always positivity and light and love to be found. And I think it's, you need, you know, people need this movie. Like, this is a movie that people need to see, because this is a movie that we need. This is a story that we need to be told, because, you know, you've talked about in a lot of your videos, Dan, I've talked about it. Like, we both had some rough things in our childhood, and everybody's got rough things in their life, in their childhood, things that they struggle with. And we need these positive films sometimes, these movies that show the dark stuff, but also really show the light and the hope. And this E.T., you know, along with those other movies I mentioned, is a kid's film, a family film that does that so beautifully. And that, you know, you can argue about maybe some of the effects don't hold up. Maybe there's a couple performances that aren't the greatest. Doesn't matter, because this movie's always going to resonate because of its heart and its message and everything that it does.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you said an absolute mouthful. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. I was getting emotional just listening to you talk about how much this film is a family film, and a film about finding yourself and finding being together. Sometimes in the toughest times, a family can be together, whether it be divorce or these men are coming into your house. You don't know what they're going to do, but and having something that is from another world, and not treating it like it's a danger to you, and treating it like you care about it, and finding that, and it has a message. You know, you could look at it as like animals, like E.T.'s an animal. You're treating an animal the right way instead of abusing an animal. You know, there's so many messages, and like you said about the blockbusters, I don't care what kind of films a filmmaker makes. If the filmmaker has a message in a place that he's trying to go with the film, and that film then resonates 35 years later, she is doing something right. For a movie from 35 years ago to have this kind of emotional connection, to do a 44-year-old man and you're a 30-something-year-old man, and we're sitting here talking about this, and I'm sharing E.T. with my 7-year-old nephew, and giving it to his parents and saying, this might be the time for you to sit down and watch this movie with your son.
Yeah. And I got my stepsons when I first came into their lives. One of the first things we did was watch this movie. It's, you know, and they loved it, and it's always going to resonate. It's always great to watch with the kids. I wanted to go back to something I said at the beginning real quick. Was Spielberg he just thought this was kind of a passion project, probably wasn't going to do that much, had a pretty low budget, about 10 million, and then when this movie hit, like, this was the, you know, lines around the block, huge blockbuster, and actually became the highest grossing film of all time, and held that for 11 years until Jurassic Park came out, which was also a Steven Spielberg movie, which was the movie that ended up dethroning it as the #1 film of all time. And it's like I said, he just wanted to tell the story. He just wanted to tell, because it was a story that meant something to him, and because he created something authentic, it resonated with the audience in such a huge way, and was such a blockbuster, and still one of the great, you know, highest grossing films of all time. It got reissued into theaters in the 2000s, again made a lot of money. It's just, you know, it's huge, and I just always loved that. You know, they didn't pump a lot of money into this thing, they didn't need to, and it still was this massive hit.
Yeah, the message is where the real heart of the film is, no pun intended. That's with him at the end, with the heart, his beating heart, and showing how his heart is all lit up, and you'll be here, you'll be here with me. But I mean, we've talked about this movie so much.
One quick thing, real quick. There's one thing I got to do before we go. Just keep talking. I'll be right back.
All right. So usually when we end these videos, we say, where can you be found? And I can be found at Get Down, Facebook, Twitter.
Sorry, go. Yeah.
I'm just giving my.
Okay, go ahead.
I could be found at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Dan Skip Allen, or at From the Fourth Row. Or you can find my written reviews at cinesportstalk.com. That's CINESPORTASTALK. Cinesportstalk.com. Jeremy, where can you be found?
Yeah, just real quick. I said at the beginning how I had a ET stuffed figure that I went to see the movie with as a kid. Well, I don't still have that, but I got another ET figure when I was a kid as well. I've probably had this thing for close to 35 years, and it's one of the things I made sure I never lost. So here he is. Yeah, cool. And yeah, he's got mobility. He actually had the light up finger. I don't know what happened. It got chewed by an animal or something, because it doesn't have the light up finger anymore. But yeah, I've had him all this time, and it's one of my prized things that, you know, I have it with some other movie figures and stuff. You know, I couldn't have a little collection without having ET in it, and I always held on to that. So I just wanted to get that on screen before we went. But yeah, you can find me at Jeremy Paul Adams on Facebook and YouTube. I have different videos on YouTube that you can check out. I'm also one of the head guys running fullmetalmedia.com, where we do live trivia matches as well as shows such as this one where we talk movies. And I'm also part of the Worldwide Movie Games Network, which is all live movie trivia, movie debating, and other things that you can find there.
Yeah, and you know, I love it how you're like, oh, you got a prop? I'm going to show you my prop.
Yeah,
I know you didn't expect the Reese's Pieces, but for Jeremy and myself, good night.
Thank you.